Yashwant Deshmukh, political analyst who leads Sea Voter. In Washington today, you flagged how a majority of Americans are not happy with the state of affairs in their country. What we are seeing right now is, of course, advantage Trump, but nobody is calling this election yet because everybody's harking back to how in 2020 Trump was ahead of Biden on exactly this day, and then it took time and the election suddenly flipped. What are you picking up there, both as a numbers man and as a political analyst? I can't hear Yashwant either. I'm so sorry.
Are you getting my voice? Yeah.
Yes.
So a couple of the things very quickly, as the panelist was pointing out about the issues, certainly what looks like that people have voted largely on the bread and butter issues. So economic distress is the thing which has been on the mind of the working class. And that is why the working class itself across the demographic divide, there are some very, very compelling data. Barka, for example, the number of Latino voters which have shifted to Republicans this time, particularly the male Latino voters, has tripled than the 4 years back. Number of black male African American male voters which have shifted to Republicans has become 4 times. From somewhere like 6-7% range, they are almost trending into about 23-24%. Till the point of time West Coast data was merged in the exit poll data, almost like 45 out of 100 Latino voters seem to have shifted to Republicans. Now, that is unprecedented. Now, certainly the one big issue that has worked for Kamala Harris is of the female voters, because female voters across the demographics have voted for her, largely on the issue of the abortion. It is a very clear issue. But what hasn't worked largely with the huge majority of the Americans, it seems, is the idea of which ironically we have been listening for 10 years in India as well and in many other European countries, Loktantra khatre mein hai. This idea that if the left side of the spectrum does not win the election, if the right side of the election spectrum wins the election, then democracy is in danger. It's a global phenomenon, Barkha. The way I'm looking at it right now, when was the last time we ever thought that in the Scandinavian countries we would get to see a right-wing government? In so many European countries, we have seen this campaign working from the left side of the spectrum that democracy is in danger. And that campaign has fallen flat time after, because it was not the democracy which is danger, it's the economics which is the danger. It's the day-to-day life, it's the bread and butter issues which are occupying the mind, and many of the emotive issues, including the illegal immigrant, are directly related to the issues of bread and butter. So somewhere I believe that Democrats have not appreciated that, and they chose the line that this could be the last ballot that you would be ever voting for, because if Trump wins again, you may not even. And this is the one line which we have heard so many times, even in India, even in many other countries.
I was just saying before you joined that many of the debates in different ways apply to India: elite, non-elite, democracy versus non-democracy. Is there a centrist space that stands between the left and the right? Now, Arnab, I want to come to you because we keep trying to speak to you, but then we lose you on the screen. So please go ahead now, Arnab.
Yeah, so the point, I wanted to answer a question that you had asked with respect to Indian politics and whether you should stay to the center or go to the left when you are faced with somebody who's so far to the right. So in 20 yes, so Trump came to the right. Hillary was a centrist. Hillary was as centrist as a centrist could be. And at that point of time, the Democratic Party essentially sabotaged the candidature of Bernie Sanders, who was considered to be left progressive, because they felt he could not win against Trump. That basically the Democrat big money will not back a Bernie Sanders. That thing obviously was wrong, right? They realized that the only person that Trump could have beaten was the centrist candidate. They learned their lesson. So Biden ran one of the most progressive 4 years of any US president. And that was reflected in the immigration policies. So I also think that the centrist is usually the better counter to the extremist. But the Democrats, after 2016, in my opinion, took the wrong lesson. The problem wasn't that Hillary was a centrist. The problem was Hillary was Hillary. That was the problem. Another centrist, if they had gone with Pete this time, it might have been different. But they chose to go with Kamala Harris, who was seen as progressive. And here's the another problem: Kamala Harris is actually not a progressive. If you know her if you know her record as a public prosecutor, so she's been. And another problem with Kamala Harris, and again, I'm saying this without knowing if Trump has won, is that Kamala Harris was the first Democrat primary candidate to be eliminated. So she's not even popular within the Democrats. But the given her that she was not popular in the Democrats, but she was seen to be a progressive candidate, that I feel was a big mistake for the Democrats to run against Trump.
Okay.
They should have gone with a centrist.
That's a very interesting point, and I want Jamie to quickly respond to that. Yashwant, before you joined us, Jamie Metzel, who's actually a Trump critic, said that he felt that his party veered too far away from the center. So a lot of the debates in the American context apply completely to the Indian context and possibly to other contexts. Jamie, if you want to come in there. Meanwhile, as you're speaking, I just want to share that the big news at this point is that Associated Press is projecting North Carolina for Donald Trump. So, that's a big one. I mean, like, there are a lot of surprise twists and turns coming this evening. Again, AP, CNN have different projections. We're trying to keep track of both of them. Jamie, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think the Americans are very unhappy with their country, which is shocking because we're actually doing pretty well relative to most places around the world. But there is that feeling. And so the question was, who can run as a change candidate? And that's always tricky for a vice president because you've been serving with the president. So how can you be a change candidate? And that's why, as I was saying before, the Democratic Party would have been very, very well served by some kind of competitive primary, ideally a year ago. But we even had time after President Biden's absolutely disastrous debate performance on June 27th. That very night, he should have said, I thought I could do this job, but I can no longer do it. I will not seek the nomination. And then we could have had a process. But with Vice President Harris, just from, I supported her. But from the perspective of everybody who wasn't a Democrat or a Harris supporter, they didn't know how she got there, how she arrived in that role. And so that was very hard for her to position herself as a change candidate. And then when she was asked in the unscripted interviews, what would you do different than President Biden? She wasn't able to answer that question. So I agree with what was just said. There is the positioning, and my very strong view is that the center is the best place for the Democratic Party. And then there's the process. I mean, we have this crazy long 2-year primary system, but what it does is help relatively obscure people like early Bill Clinton, early Barack Obama become tested and known. So 2 years later, everybody says, well, I know who that person is. And that's what's missing here. If in fact, President Trump becomes the next president, I think it will be very, very necessary for the Democrats to do an absolute soul searching. And I hope the Republicans will too, because I would say that a very, very large number of Republicans are holding their noses with this. The evangelical Christians are a backbone of this Trump victory. And these are not people who support having sex with porn stars while your wife is at home pregnant. There are all kinds of things that people, all Americans, don't like about what's going on here. And if we don't elevate our politics on all sides, we're going to be in even graver danger going forward.
Yeah. Seema, I want to bring you in, and then I'll take last comments from everybody else. Seema, go ahead.
So my overall point, if 70% of the people think the country is going in the wrong direction, the incumbent doesn't win normally. That's what electoral history here shows. Number two, Donald Trump kept it simple, and Kamala Harris wasn't able to define herself. in any way that was tangible and that resonated, you know. So then Obama came on the scene. Again, I thought it was a bit of a misstep to tell black men that, you know, you are not being cool if you don't vote for her because she's a woman. Needless. It was found to be patronizing and condescending by many people. And I talked to some African American friends of mine. They didn't like that. So, of course, Trump can say anything and get away with it. He has this advantage of that the voters filter out all the filth that comes out, all the
Yes.
vile language and all the awful gestures and everything. The voters feel he is who he is. At some weird level, the voter feels he's a real guy. He's not a made up politician. And, you know, I'm sorry, but Kamala Harris is very programmed. Uh, she's not able to go on for unscripted interviews where when the going gets tough, she just, is not able to give an answer on the fly. So these, I think, would be the thing. Then there are the shy Trump voters. They still exist, I would say. I wanted to point that out.
Yeah.
Because family disputes have become so awful now, people don't talk to each other if you're voting one way or another. So people are not revealing their choices. This is especially true among Indian Americans, by the way.
That's interesting. All right, Seema, thanks for your time. I'm going to take last comments from everybody else. Yashwant, we haven't heard from you enough, so we'll start with you. Go ahead.
Barkha, it seems like that, this country has been bitterly divided all along, but the fault lines are even more exposed with this election. And if Kamala Harris manages to win this election, it will be only and only because of the female voters, because females across the spectrum have voted for her. So certainly there is something for the Republicans to learn that, that part of the story is not fitting in as far as their narrative is concerned. But barring that, abortion and the female issue, I think every other issue has worked largely in favor of Donald Trump. And at the end of the day, Democrats have to realize that this otherization, this entire branding of you are not democratic enough, you are not liberal enough, you are something. If you vote for Trump, you are something which is not acceptable in the society. That kind of divisive line of theory, I mean, that's something which is repulsive by the common person on the ground, and that has not worked. 72% people said that things are not going in the right direction. Big, huge chunk of states which are going for the Trump right now, number one issue is economy. Let's accept that. I think somewhere down the line, we will have to analyze this, not just from the American perspective, but even from other democracies which have gone to elections this year. I think, ironically, the Democratic side, the liberal side, the left liberal side has gone for issues which are less on substance and more on emotion. And while the right of the scale has gone more on the bread and butter issues, day-to-day life issues. And that is what has mattered more than the Loktantra narrative.
And that's so interesting, because sometimes it's the other way around. The right wing, emphasizes identity.
Exactly. They are known for that. They are known for that. That's the irony of it. They are known to use all the emotive issues, all the bhadkau thing and everything under the sun. Yeah. But the reality is striking in some different strange way.